Cool. Lovely. Shall we start?
Let's start.
This is great to be back talking to you again.
Oh, thanks, Rich.
In a different environment, though, isn't
Completely
it?
different, yeah.
All right, Carolyn, great to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good. So we are here at Portsmouth CCIXR building in Portsmouth University, in this amazing space with this amazing background, which we may decide to change. We don't know. We're just going to use it and see how we get on.
Excellent.
So, Carolyn, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. So I'm a cyber psychologist, and I specialize in workplace technology use. So how we as adults use technology in a work environment, and that's both in office as well as remote and hybrid, and how basically technology impacts us and how we use technology to get our work done and be more productive. But really it is around how it affects us personally, and what we can do about it.
Okay, so what's a cyber psychologist?
Psychologist. It's a bit of a mouthful. But cyber psychology is quite a new discipline in the world of psychology. It's only really been around since the 1990s when computers started becoming a big part of our lives. And it's grown and developed from there. And the majority of what cyber psychologists do is they look at how we use technology and how it changes us, both from a society level, but also more importantly, how it changes us as individuals. Not just our mental well-being, but actually how we think, how we behave, how we engage with others, how we actually see ourselves. And the majority of cyber psychologists look at how children and young adults use technology on social media, in the classroom, at home. There's quite a lot of mental health that they look at in terms of cyberbullying and self-image issues like impact of social media on eating disorders and addictive behaviors and gaming. I don't really look at that element of it. I kind of look more at adults. So it is really about the fact that we make tools, being gadgets, and then they make us, and they change us and change the way we are as human beings. And that's really what we look at as cyber psychologists.
And your background, Carolyn, so you come from a marketing background, which is what sort of led you on this journey. So talk us a little bit about that.
So I trained as a marketer and went into FMCG corporate marketing. I did that for 15 years, doing new product development and branding and media communication. And then social media actually started coming into being a big part of what marketing is. And I decided that's not really what I wanted to do because I have a much broader strategic background. So I left marketing completely and went back to uni and started from year one and retrained as a psychologist. And then discovered cyber psychology and did a master's in cyber psychology. But one of the biggest reasons I went into psychology was because what fascinated me most about marketing is how people engage with products from I've got £10, what am I going to spend it on? And why do they do that? And why do they spend on this product and not that product? And why do they make those decisions? So that's really the biggest reason I went into psychology. But then I got sidetracked by cyber and just went down the rabbit hole of technology, and I love it because I love technology, I love gadgets. So it was just part of my passion of combining those two things of human behavior and the engagement with the gadgets we wear and the gadgets we use.
I love the fact you point that out, now wear, isn't it? Because once upon a time, which was the gadgets we use, we now wear. Yeah. It's, it's such an evolving industry. But the marketing bit's really interesting because I'm marketing background. Yeah. We've talked about this before, Caroline, on a podcast we did previously.
Yes.
But it is a big impact that it is having. I mean, obviously seeing the dawn of AI and, dare I say it, ChatGPT. I also got introduced to auto ChatGPTs the other day.
Yeah.
I'm told I should be using those. Still not gone down that road yet.
Yeah.
But I guess from a point of view from this digital live series, which is what this kind of recording is about, and the skills that we kind of use, and there's terminology that comes around sort of digital. I mean, digital is a vast subject.
Yes.
But there's terms like digital natives, digital immigrants. They banded around to describe those who were sort of born around the turn of the century and grew up with a sort of super confident sort of use in digital gadgets.
Yeah.
And then those who were born, who had a more analog sort of childhood, kind of before this, and were sort of less confident using gadgets. But how do we go about improving the skills of those who are sort of digital immigrants and reduce the generational divide around technology use?
That's one of my favorite questions about digital generations, because the reality is, in general, the generations don't exist anymore. I'm 50. I grew up with Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. So I became confident with using technology in my younger years, in my teen years. And by the time I started work in the mid-90s or early 90s, I was already using computers at work. I already had my own email address. I had my own mobile phone. So I was already confident with technology by that point. So, and my contemporaries who went to uni with me back in the day are senior managers and directors in big companies. So in my head, the majority of that digital divide isn't in the corporate environment, isn't in the work environment at all. The only difference is the confidence that people have in their ability to use technology. Once people leave work, yes, when you get to your 70s and 80s, they didn't grow up with that basic technology that we had when we were playing computer games in the youth. So there is less of a confidence in picking up a new mobile phone and trying to figure out how this new Apple works or this other phone works and this new upgrade, and I don't want to watch because someone's tracking me. There's less confidence in that ability to use it. But from a work context, I don't believe there's a generational digital divide anymore. It's just in the confidence level and the digital intelligence level that we see there's some differences. But even then, you see some young people who are not at all confident with technology, and some older people who will just pick up a new thing and immediately they will be able to figure out how to use the app or the gadget. So I think we need to drop that whole narrative we have around the digital divide. I think it's not healthy for us as older people, but also it puts too much pressure on the younger people to perform digitally in a work environment.
So is the difference then just personality traits? You know, in terms of, I'm okay with using this technology, won't even think about it, I'll just figure it out, Yeah,
I think it comes down to digital resilience and digital intelligence, and they're talking about digital confidence and digital intelligence being one of the big things now that people measure when using gadgets. So digital intelligence is your ability to actually use stuff. It encompasses everything about how you feel and how you operate with technology. Digital resilience is about being able to get over stuff quickly. So if you're a victim of cyberbullying, how quickly do you get over it? If you're struggling with something digitally, how quickly do you figure it out? And digital confidence is how quickly can I pick up this new app or this new gadget and figure it out myself. And I think that really is is part of what we really need to start looking at for people in terms of how they engage with their technology. I've kind of forgotten your question. I'm not sure if that answers it.
I just find this fascinating. We could just keep going, Carolyn. It's fine. I think I've even forgotten my question. It doesn't matter. We can cut that bit out. It's fine. I think, what did I say? Around, no, you were talking about generational.
Yes.
And then I said, is it just around personality?
Oh, yes. So I don't think it is around personality, because I'm a social extrovert, but an introvert by nature. So I wouldn't say that it's harder for me to pick up technology than an extrovert. It does come down to core skills and core confidence in our own abilities rather than personality type, or just a basic demographic factors don't play into our ability to engage with technology, or even actually psychographic, unless it comes to our confidence levels and our resilience and our ability to actually pick up the technology.
So you use a couple of terms there. So you mentioned resilience, actually, at the term, which I'm just going to pick up on. And we talked about confidence, and another term, there's digital intelligence as well that I keep hearing about. And they're starting to be used a lot more both in sort of media and in companies. But what do these mean? And are there ways to kind of build these skills in people?
Well, digital resilience, I think, like any form of resilience, can be built. And digital confidence, again, it can be built. But I think one of the key things with each of those in terms of confidence and ability to pick up gadgets, if someone is working remotely, I think it's about identifying how confident they are in using technology or picking up new skill sets around app use or technology use. So being able to identify if someone is struggling is an important thing for us as businesses to look into. I did some research during the first lockdown of the pandemic, and one of the things that came out of that is about people's self-confidence and their ability to use the technology. If they're sitting in an office environment, it's very easy for them to say, Joe, blogs, come help me with this, or IT, can you sort this out? When you're at home with no ability to actually pull someone in to help you, you had to figure it out yourself. And the level of what we called computer self-efficacy, which is basically confidence, grew exponentially during the pandemic because we had to figure it out ourselves. We couldn't just lean on someone else because we couldn't be bothered to work it out for ourselves. So that, I think, is really important for businesses to identify that and give people the training or the support that they need and help them through the process of gaining that confidence. So whether or not it's sending them on a computer course or giving them links to YouTube videos on how to use this app, whatever that looks like, is being able to identify those types of people who struggle with picking up new technology. When it comes to digital intelligence, I think that's slightly trickier to train someone in, but I think that comes with confidence and resilience. It's once you have that confidence and resilience, you then gain the ability to figure stuff out and move on to new bits of technology and new gadgets. Because the more you learn, the more confident you become, the better, the more intelligent you become. It's like learning anything. Sure. When you first start out learning it, it's all very complicated, but you quickly build up that basic automatic knowledge.
So when we put that in the workplace then,
yeah.
Where does that responsibility sit, do you think? Is that the individual or is that the business to kind of support that, or is it a blend of both?
I think it's a blend of both.
Okay.
I think that it's very difficult sometimes for individuals to put their hand up and go, I'm struggling. Because if they say,
Agree.
I'm really struggling with something, it may, for them, indicate that they're not very good at their job. But actually, they could be incredibly talented, have a lot of knowledge and skill sets. But if they seem to not be able to work a program, like an Excel document, they may think they're being perceived as not very good at their job. And it may also reduce their productivity level. So they may be the most competent person or most skilled person in the department, but if they can't work in Excel spreadsheets or use all the tools, they may come across as least productive or least able. So to put your hand up and say, actually, I'm really struggling with this, I need help, is one of the first things. Also from a team manager perspective, is having that open mind and seeing the difference between their competency as the skill set they're employed for and the ability to maybe not be as familiar with the technology as they could be, and giving them the support that they need. So it could be really a conversation between managers and individuals putting their hand up, managers being open to that, non-judgmental, and businesses providing some element of this is a fund or a training programs that we provide that is cheap or easy, or we can send someone on. So having that culture that's open to, not everyone knows how to use software programs. You may have used Word in or Apple programs in your previous job, and actually this is slightly different, so you need a bit more training. And that's okay, but it's about having that open culture, having those honest conversations to support people and actually being able to do the job they're hired to do.
And then what about then potentially measuring that? Would that be an easy, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, if you were to ask someone about their confidence using digital on a score of 0 to 10, I guess that's one way in my mind that you could then look at then a progression of that. But is there any other?
Giving or asking someone a score of 1 to 10 is very relative, because my 5 could be
1 to
your
7,
8.
I heard on the radio this morning. It shouldn't be 1 to 10.
Or even that, my 5 could be your 3.
Yeah.
So it's all relative. I think part of that is about outputs. In terms of if someone can't use Excel, well, actually in 2 months' time, are they better at it? Are they asking less questions? And I think it's a both and. It's a conversation of, I feel I can do this better than I did before. Manager, do you think I can do it better? Am I providing the outputs that you need in order for me to meet the bottom line and do the job that you've employed me to do? So I think it's difficult to measure, and I don't think there should be you have to get 70% on this Excel test. It's about, are you using the tools that is needed within this program to do your job well? Yes or no? And if no, or if I'm not competent enough, then how do we actually solve that? So it's a really difficult thing to say, this is how you want to make it work.
And I think I'm so glad to have you involved with what we're doing, because a lot of the work I'm seeing with the Digital Skills Partnership, which runs across the whole of the Southeast, is because of that difficulty in measuring these things like confidence and motivation and resilience. We're not seeing a lot of it being measured, and actually it's been avoided in terms of being talked about, discussed. But it's a massive problem. It's a massive problem, I think.
I think it is a massive problem, and there could be questionnaires that you could do to measure someone's confidence in technology. But again, they're I was going to say self-fulfilling questionnaires, but they're self-completion questionnaires. So again, it's relative. I can fill in a questionnaire and say, really confident, but actually I'm not, because I don't want to give the impression that I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, there are ways to measure it, but even then it's subjective. How we solve it, I think it's a really big project that needs to happen. I think part of it is changing the narrative around you're too old to, if I'm constantly being told I'm too old to actually figure it out, so I'm too old to engage in new technology, I'm going to start believing it. And I'm not going to have that confidence. I did some training with some apprentices who just come out of university. And one of the things that they said is, well, old people don't know how to use technology. I'm like, but actually you don't know how to use business technology. You know how to use social media. But in their head, they've been told so often that they're the digitally smart ones and they know how to actually make it work, and the old people are not actually all that competent. So I think as a society and in the media especially, we have to change that conversation on its head and go, we're all competent. We're just competent in different areas. There's so many different gadgets, there's so many different apps and technology, so many different functionalities that we use technology for. Just because I don't use VR and gaming doesn't mean I don't know how to do a good Excel document. And that's what I need to do my job. And on top of that, another one of my pet peeves, in a way...
Go on, get it all out, Carolyn, get it all out.
Get it all out, is I spend a lot of time with SMEs. And one of the big things they do is they give a 20-year-old their social media platform for their business. And from a marketing perspective, that really grates against my sense of branding, because they're very good at their personal social media, but they don't have the communication skills, they don't have the ability to put forward a business scenario to the right audience. They can do a great TikTok video, but you don't put a TikTok video on LinkedIn, or they'll put all the company communication on TikTok when actually that's not the audience. The audience is on Instagram, or it's on LinkedIn, or it's on Twitter. So they have competence in a specific area of social media and a specific way of doing it, but not corporate communication. So that is one of my real pet peeves, is just handing over responsibility of the front face of the communication to a 20-something-year-old. And some of them are brilliant, and I will not take that away from them. But in general, they don't yet have the business acumen and the communication skill sets that they need to do a really good job for a young company or any small and medium-sized business.
I think the way I see it in a very simplistic form when it comes to kind of using technology and digital is there's love and fear. Right? It's as simple as that. There's those that love it and embrace it naturally. I mean, whether they are people who will love and embrace more things in general, I don't know. But it's the fear factor that, that example you just gave of perhaps a business owner giving that responsibility. I think there's an element of fear in that. I don't understand it. I'm going to get someone in who will tick that box to be able to do it. But there's a lot more fear I'm seeing, especially, for instance, we touched on AI, ChatGPT. There's this kind of people starting to do this and step back from it because... where's it going to go? Where's it going to end up? But the fear is definitely there.
I think the fear of unknown is true in any area. It's that I don't feel competent enough, because especially with grown-ups, is that we should know how to do things. And I think a lot of times when there's an area that we're not competent in, we fear judging ourselves in that, and I actually can't do it, or I don't know how to, so I don't want to be seen as being not very good and failing. So I'd rather give it to someone else and not go down that road. Sometimes we're just not brave enough. And I think that's one of the things we need to do, is just be brave and just say, actually, it's okay to fail. It's okay to mess up slightly. But I'm still better at understanding the communication I need to put out there, and better at so many other things, that this is something I could relatively easily learn. It's the knowledge base behind, or going back to my example of small businesses, my knowledge base is much more important than not getting the video right. And I think as grown-ups, we also have lived in this world of perfectionism and expectations around perfectionism. And the younger generation don't have that, because they've done TikTok videos and they've done filters and other things to improve their non-perfection, and they're okay with that, and non-perfection. But I think with the older generation, we're not so okay with that.
I agree. And what about motivation? Because, for instance, we've touched on kind of using technology in the workplace, and the motivation there, you would assume, is you're being told perhaps that that's what you need to do in your role. But I guess more in the sort of your day-to-day life, what motivation, like I don't know, what's your thoughts on it as motivation? How should we be driven to use technology? How should we see it? How should we be motivated by it or not?
I think one of the things we do generally is a new gadget, shiny new gadget comes out and we embrace it. Or my friend's got a new smartwatch and look at all the things it can do, so I'm going to buy one too. We don't step back and go, well, what impact is this going to have on me? So there's a theory in psychology or cyber psychology which talks about technology being passive or active. And I think that's really the wrong way to look at it. I think it's about us taking on technology in an active or passive way. So I've chosen not to have a smartwatch for the simple reason that I know my boundaries. And I know if I get a smartwatch, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole of, looking at it every 5 seconds, and every notification, every email. I'm going to be my arm's going to get stuck in this position because I'm going to be looking all the time.
I think there should be a new emoji that's this now.
Exactly.
I see a lot of people doing that.
Exactly.
Or a dance.
Yeah, TikTok dance. And so I think it's about, and even if you have got a smartwatch, again, is maybe sitting back and saying, well, actually, what impact is this having on me? How has my behavior changed? How am I thinking about myself? How am I thinking about others? Am I spending that time with others? What is important in life for me? And am I actually embracing those things that are important in life? Or am I being distracted by gadgets that I own and things that are happening in China or out of Mongolia or America or some random influencer? Are they more important, this virtual world, or is my physical world more important? So I'm not so sure it's about motivation. I think it's about taking back control. And on a semi-regular basis, sitting down with yourself and going, well, I've got this extra technology, I've got all this stuff, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to fit this into my life and make it work for me? Or am I okay with being controlled by it and just going to randomly dive into Alice's Wonderland? And that's okay, but it's about you making that choice.
Sure.
And I think there's so many times that I'd say almost 3 to 6 months, and that's why I say so many times, I have to sit down with myself and go, I've set these boundaries for myself. These are things I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do my work day. And then I start slipping and go, oh, I'll just check this email. Oh, I'll just do this. And then I end up at 11 o'clock at night staring at my phone when actually my boundary was 8 p.m., all devices off and in my office and not looking at them again. And then I have to take a step back going, this is not important. This is important, having conversations with my family, with my friends, going out, doing things and being with people. That's important. And I have to do a check and go, no. So motivation can come into that, but I think when in taking up new technology, it is about thinking through first what this is going to do to me, and then afterwards going, after 6 months, going, actually, how is this really impacting me and others around me? And I say the others around me because the research shows that grown-ups or adults in the working environments who use their technology and look at work emails after hours, it doesn't just affect them. What they've found is that the children within the household have high stress and anxiety levels or higher than those who don't. For the simple reason that if you're looking at your phone and you get cross and angry, the children see that. They see the reaction, they see the anger. They take it on board as something they've done because that's what children do. They don't rationalize that's their phone, that's something going on their phone. And it changes the atmosphere in the house. It changes the way that the parent engages with them because they put the phone down, they're still angry. So there's much higher levels of stress, anxiety, and amongst the younger children with parents who are still looking at their emails and their phones after hours. Also, if parents are looking at their phones, they're not giving their children one-to-one time, which means that the children aren't engaging and learning social skills. And that's how we learn social skills, is by practice, and especially when we're young. So we often talk about how with children we have to reduce their screen time and we have to do this and we have to give them boundaries, but we forget that children emulate our behavior, and we have to display that for our own children, our own families, and say, this is what I choose to do, or this is what we choose to do as a family. We choose to be present. We choose to not have phones at the dinner table. We choose to not, whatever that looks like.
Do you think we're in a world where most people recognise that, their own self-control in regards to technology? Or do you think we're more in a world where people aren't even thinking about it, they're just using the latest technology, the latest watch, and they're just in it and don't reflect upon it that much?
The latter.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people just absorb new technology because the gadgets are fun, it's exciting, and it increases dopamine levels. So, and that's interesting, or it's engaging for me, and life can be rubbish a number of times, so actually that's a really great escape. Before the pandemic hit, there was research done on people who segmented their work and home life and how they actually manage those boundaries. And they found that only a third of workers actually had a strategy in place. So whether they segmented work and home completely, or they integrate home and work life. If they had young children, they needed to come home at 3, pick their children up, did bath and bedtime, and then they'd go back from 8 to 10 and do a couple of more hours at work. They're integrators, and it worked for them, but they had that strategy, and 2/3 didn't. They just let technology happen to them. During the pandemic, it just all went out the window, and no one had any segmentation strategies. I would suggest that it's probably defaulted back to 1/3 and 2/3, that a third of people have different strategies than they did before, because now most people have some element of a hybrid work scenario, but they probably still have some element of strategy. And it's only when people get to the point of burnout or massive stress and anxiety that they go, something's got to change. I can't keep doing this, otherwise I'm going to fall apart. And that's when they put those strategies in place. But up to that point, often people just let technology happen to them, and they just take more and more on board, and they don't sit down and think about what is going on, how am I dealing with this? Am I heading towards burnout? And most people don't know they're going to burn out until they actually do.
Which, yeah. And then they've got to deal with that. And
exactly.
Yeah. And do people, from what you've experienced, associate that with that technology use? Or is it lots of other factors that come into their world that they probably think it's that's causing that burnout? Or
I would be very surprised if people say, looking at my emails at 8 o'clock at night has caused stress and anxiety and burnout.
Yeah.
The majority of the time, your technology use is influenced by the corporate culture, your own personal preferences for technology, your own boundaries, your expectations of work, how old you are, where you are in the corporate ladder, how much of a workaholic you are, how ambitious you are, all those factors. Also actually home life in terms of the home expectations of whether or not you should turn off technology, or if your partner is a workaholic and you just bored, so you just go and work. There's all these different factors that fall into the realm of the decisions you make about your technology use. So what we often do when we're stressed and anxious, we blame someone else, or we blame other factors because it's not our fault. Because when we take it on board as actually I'm doing this, we then have to take responsibility for it. Some people do, and that's amazing, but the vast majority is like, my boss is annoying, he always makes me do this, I have to be on Slack at 10 o'clock because my whole team is still responding to Slack messages at 2 o'clock, and if I'm not part of the conversation, then I get into the office the next day, the decision's been made, I haven't inputted into it, so I feel like a bad worker, or I may be seen as someone who's not good enough and may not get promoted. So there's a lot of underlying factors that come into the decisions you make about your technology use after hours. So it's really up to the individual to own up to that in some ways, and put those boundaries in place and get back that control and make those decisions and have those conversations with their managers and teams saying, this is what I need to do. This is how I need to do my life because. And if that's not working for the team and the manager, well, maybe they need to have another think about where they're working. And I know this sounds quite harsh, but to not burn out, it's really important to make sure that you're looking after yourself in the same way you look after yourself from a physical health perspective. You have to look after yourself from a mental and psychological perspective. So what choices are you making?
I'm going to put this on you now, Carolyn, as an individual. So the point of this Digital Live series is to kind of showcase from a business perspective, from an individual perspective, from a community perspective, schools perspective and students. But it's also to look at the individuals and our own associations with technology, and we discuss some of those elements. But we've all got an experience with digital or technology, whatever you want to call it. So a question to you: what thing in your digital life would you change to help with, I don't know, either your business, your motivation, your own personal development, mental health? What would you change for you in your own experiences?
I'm not sure if there's more that I'd change right now, but the things that I have changed in the past and I try to stick to, the boundaries that I put in place and constantly break and then have to reset myself, is I have a different technology for different spheres of life. So I have my own personal phone, I have my personal iPad, and I have my work laptop. And I try my best not to integrate the three. So I need to set boundaries from a time perspective of this is work time and this is personal time. Mostly because when I was in marketing, I would work every hour that I was awake. And if something needed to be done, it needed to be done, working weekends, evenings, till through the nights, whatever needed to be done to meet that deadline, that's what I did. And I burnt out from emotionally and psychologically. I just got exhausted. And I know I can slip down that road very quickly. It's a very slippery slope for me. So I have to put those boundaries in place for me. Doing things like closing my laptop at the end of the day is a great signal for me that my work is done, my work personality is over, I'm now wife personality, I'm now friend personality, I'm now daughter.
So literally that click of that laptop is your trigger to...
And I've got my workbook. I try as much as possible to write things down rather than put everything on notes because I need time to switch off. So I have an A6 little notepad that I take with me outside of my big A4 thing that I leave on my desk. I take that with me so that if something comes up, if I remember something that I need to do, I'll write it in there. I don't pick up my phone and write notes because I need to put that down. I need to put it away. So those are the things that I have done and I continually need to do. So that's why I think I probably wouldn't do anything new. It's more about I constantly need to take a rain check on how much those boundaries have slipped. Because as I said before, they often do. Someone calls and I go, I'll just quickly take this. Or I meant to finish it at 6:30, but I'll just quickly finish this and end up being 8 o'clock at night. And I try to leave my phone upstairs on Sundays so I don't look at my screen, but let me just check, So it's those boundaries need to be constantly aligned, realigned, readjusted. And yeah, that's really for my own mental health and just keeping myself present when I need to be and living, because that's important for me. Human connection is an important part of who I am. And if I'm sitting there on the screen, I don't get that. So...
Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
That's great. Thank you. I mean, any other questions? So we can kind of cut this here if we need to, but any other things? As far as I'm concerned, we've gone through the things that you wanted to, but is there anything you think might be lacking?
No, I think I've kind of done, said all the things. Yeah, I think so.
We've covered all the angles.
Any questions you have?
13 minutes. Have you learned anything from that conversation? That's key.
It's funny how I've been thinking about all these things for the last couple of weeks anyway, so it's just really nice to hear.
Oh, that's great.
Yay!
Because I feel like I've been kind of dipping in and out of burnout related to technology for the last couple of months, so I don't feel so alone anymore, which is nice.
How amazing is that?
Pretty good. In terms of questions, I guess, us being, I know this is probably not the same, but we've got a lot of tech here, and I often get I feel like there's an underlying electrical just energy about us in that frequency, which just, I don't know if there is some reality to how it is affecting me in a stressful way, but it does feel like there's an underlying part of and just being in this environment constantly all the time, every day, it does feel like there's a pressure. Do you know anything about that? Am I right in thinking there's something there, or is that just psychological trick to have this basic thing?
It's not my speciality, but I have read some of that, and from what I've read, there is some truth to it in terms of it does have a physiological impact on us, having all these like Wi-Fi signals and general technology. It's got an impact on us that we don't actually feel physically, like we hear sound or see things, but it does change the biology of our cells, from what I've understood and read. But I think also just what I've also heard is a lot of those who work in social media have high levels of stress and anxiety, higher levels of stress and anxiety than we do as a general rule. Partly because they get this bombardment of negative feedback on their posts. But I think also in being involved in a technological environment like you are, there's an element of expectation. of you have to be good with gadgets and you have to be there all the time. So, and you have to be fully absorbed in it. And I think that's also part of the stress and anxiety that we put on ourselves, is our own expectations of what we do with that technology and our own job profile. So I can imagine that would affect you in a negative way in some areas of your life. And I was talking before about, I work with a VR company doing soft skills training in virtual reality, and I have noticed that when I spend a lot of time in that virtual world, I'm absolutely exhausted, more so than I am if I go on I don't run, but if I had to go on a run, I probably am more exhausted because it's physical, it's mental, it's staying stationary for long periods of time. So stuck in the space where you're just looking at a screen, not moving, is incredibly hard on our bodies. And I know that there's been quite a bit of research done on those actors in Covent Garden who stand still for hours on end. And there's an element of atrophication of part of their bodies, and it's not very good for them. And we do that when we're in a flow and we're focusing on something we're really enjoying. Our body goes into that state, and often it's in a tense state because we're concentrating, we have to get this done. And so our body atrophies a bit. And that biological, social element is massively connected. And if our body's not moving, it's going to have an impact on our emotions, on our body's ability to produce hormones, our brain's ability to produce dopamine, or all the other things. So it's not just the electrical signals, it's so many other variables that will impact on us. So it's about having work strategies. So one of the things I do is if I know I'm going to a big project that I have to really focus, I put my phone in the hallway and I set it for 90 minutes. So I know at 90 minutes I have to get up and I have to move around. Our brain can't focus for more than 90 minutes anyway, even when we're in a deep flow state. So it's getting up, moving around, make sure I'm stretching, not just walking. Putting those things in place that get us moving again, and take us away from this, because we get so insulated and into this little space. So helping us to take a step back really helps our brain activity. And there's some research I've recently read that 20 minutes of sitting still only helps us to refocus in some areas, but actually 20 minutes of walking makes us more productive, so much exponentially more productive in our next session than what we would have just sitting still. So one of the things you could do, even if it's chucking down, is just go for a walk. 15, 20 minutes, just walk. There's also other research that says if you walk in nature, you become a lot more productive and a lot less stressed than if you walk in a city, because there's all these, in a city there's cars you have to avoid and people and all the noises. So get out and walk. If possible, go out to a more natural place to go walk, but get out and walk. Do something, because it kind of resets you, and then you go back into another 90 minutes of full-blown concentration. You're a lot more productive that way than you would be otherwise. Some research that was done during lockdown, and now is also really relevant for those who do hybrid working, is that if you left home at 7:30 and did an hour travel, and then left work at 6 and did an hour travel, you'd spend that time just catching up on emails, looking at what you've got to do for the day, just slowly, gently easing into work, shifting your mindset from I'm a home person to I'm a work person, because there's different personas, and we need to have that shift. But because they kind of in their head say, well, I leave home at 7:30, therefore I'm going to sit down at my laptop at 7:30 and start working. But what you don't get is that transition time, and that time when you're getting your head and your mindset and your persona into that space. And also it showed that you're no more productive by putting in those extra 2 hours than you do putting in your normal working hours. But also from the studies of the 4-day work week, they've shown that if you can compact your days into specific focused deep work, no notifications on, nothing else going on, turning off emails, this is all you do. You're more productive in those 4 days than you are in 5 days if you go into the office, because you sit down and get the work done. It's also been shown with working mums. They know they've got from 9 to 5, and that's it. If they don't get the work done, that's all they have. And pre-pandemic, I remember these little phrases being thrown out, oh, half day, when actually they're leaving on their contracted time. And they've been more productive in that time than someone who's faffing around, going outside for a cigarette break, having coffee, going to the loo, doing this, chatting to their mate. They get more done than anyone else in the office, even single people, even married fathers really. So it's all about that focus time, and then giving your body and your mind that ability to re-energize. And that is the key, is to reduce stress and anxiety, is recovery time after deep work, and no notifications and no distractions when you're actually physically focused. I went off on a tangent there.
No, it's great. But thank you, and thank you for sharing your question, because this is the whole point of what we're doing with these conversations, is to bring to life the realities of our worlds with digital and technology, because I'm a big advocate, but I also see the huge challenges we all face. So it's sharing those conversations and making it okay to talk about it, and the well-being side of it, the mental health side of things is a big factor for us all to consider, without a doubt. And being okay and confident to talk about it is great, so thank you.
Exactly, yeah. And I love gadgets, I love technology, but I also understand the impact it has on us. And that's my big thing, is helping us get back control. So it's not about me saying you shouldn't do this or you shan't, don't do that. It's about how do we take that back?
I think that's certainly what I've taken away from this, is the control element. It's not about technology's rubbish. It's not about technology is the be all and end all, and we should all just use it 24/7. It's that control and understanding yourself and your relationship with it. And
using it to make our lives better, not letting it control our lives and being a slave to it. It's kind of de-slaving from technology.
Hashtag de-slaving technology, we'll put that in.
Yeah. And because we become slaves to it. And we become slaves to the games we play and the social media posts we have and how many people are replying to it, and I have to just check. But actually, if we decouple ourselves from that and break those bonds and do it because we're choosing to, it changes everything about our mental wellness, and it changes about our mindset around the control that technology and that social media post has over our own mental well-being.
So how can we get someone to start that journey then, if someone isn't someone who recognises that about themselves?
They say that the best way to change a light bulb is for the light bulb to want to be changed.
Okay.
So it's if someone recognises that and says, actually, there's something wrong, but I don't know what to do. It's about them. They have to go on that journey and figure it out. And that's part of what I do, is I work with people who are on that journey, wanting to change things and don't quite know how to do that. And this is part of why I do this, is helping people kind of see that they're not alone. Because a lot of people, when they come to therapy, they say, am I weird? Is something wrong with me? Is it just me? So a lot of times we want someone to validate that it's not just my fault. It's not something I've done wrong. I'm not weird. I'm not an addict, or I'm not the only one who does this or feels this. And I think that's the big thing, is recognizing that, yes, I have an issue. I need some help, and I'm not an addict, and I'm not this, I'm not that, but I just need some help. I just need some direction. I need to get back control, and I don't know how to. And that's the first step, really, is just admitting that to yourself. And as I said, it's not about giving up all your gadgets. It's about saying, well, what am I using this for? How is it helping my life? How is it adding value? How can it add value? Should I be playing that game? Maybe I shouldn't, but I still like it. Okay, so what value is it adding? When do you play it? How often? Do you set yourself a 30-minute alarm that I'll play it for 30 minutes at 5 o'clock, and that's all I'm going to do, and then I'm going to set it down. So it's giving yourself that ability. I was going to say forgiveness in the process, but it's permission in the process to use technology wherever you want to and not blame yourself for it. I was chatting to someone yesterday, and one of the things they said is, I know it's bad, but I use technology. I look at my emails at 11 o'clock at night. I said, why is that bad? You've chosen to use that word, and you've chosen to take on that mindset of it's bad. But if you choose, because you've got children and they only go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, and the only time you have to double check your emails just to make sure there's not something gone completely mad, then that's okay. But give yourself that permission. This is my job. I just need to make sure everything hasn't gone pear-shaped. Or I need to catch something, because otherwise from 11 to 6 or 7 hours that it could have just, the internet, everything happens really quickly. If something happened at 10:30, if I don't catch it at 11, by 7 o'clock, the whole business has gone down. So it's those kind of things. Give yourself permission to do that. But make sure you give yourself permission. Make sure you have that control, and you justify it by saying, that's what I need to do. And not listen to Joe Blogs, who's saying, well, you shouldn't be looking at your screen after 8 o'clock at night because you need to go to sleep at 10 and you need 2 hours. Yes, you do. But if this is part of your job and it means you sleep well at night, then do it. Give yourself that permission. You have it.
A good example, actually. So a former boss of mine we used to have this debate where for me, to switch off, it's almost like you're talking about that click of the laptop. I'm sort of similar in that sense.
Yeah.
Is that for me is the switch off, and whatever it is, I can deal with in the morning.
Yes.
But I know my boss was very different.
Absolutely.
He had to feel in control 24/7, and that meant he could sleep better and relax because he always felt like he was in the know, he knew what was happening. So
it's exactly that.
It's the person, it's understanding yourself, isn't it, and your relationship and how to best manage that, which, depending on your age, comes with probably more knowledge and time, perhaps, to understand yourself better.
Exactly. And it's different for self-employed people because this is their livelihood.
Sure.
And they struggle to switch off because they start at zero every month and sometimes minus 2,000 because they've got bills to pay or salaries. So they do worry and they do need to do this, but that's part of their ability to sleep at night. So I think we need to just stop listening to everyone's rules and put in our own personal boundaries of what we are able to do and what fits within our lifestyle and what our objectives are. But at least have that control and give yourself permission to step outside those boundaries, but then step back in and refocus on a semi-regular basis and take a rain check of saying, actually, no, this is not working. What am I going to do? How is this impacting us? But think about it. Spend time thinking about it. Don't just let it happen to you.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome, Rich.
Brilliant. We're done? Yeah?